Welcome to the Impact Multiplier CEO podcast. If you're a chief executive or if you think like one and you want to create exponentially greater impact, then this show is for you. My name is Richard Medcalf, founder of Xquadrant. I coach some of the most successful and impressive CEOs and executive teams on the planet and help them achieve even more extraordinary results. Because no matter how successful you've been in the past, there's always a whole new level of impact available to you. So, if you're ready to play a bigger game than ever before, I invite you to join us and become an Impact Multiplier CEO. Nigel Verdon is the Chief Executive of Railsbank, a leading embedded finance experience platform. Now, he's a finance guy on a mission. He's been a successful fintech entrepreneur, and in Railsbank, he spotted a transition to move from old finance to new finance, to really streamline, remove friction, and create a democratized process to access to finance. This is why it's more than just a business for him. I think it's a bit of a mission. And in our conversation today, we look at how he leads during uncertainty and volatility, how he mobilises his team to deliver on the mission, and how he even spotted that real market need in the first place. Nigel is a very seasoned and accomplished executive, and he's up to really interesting things with Railsbank. So strap yourself in, sit back, and enjoy this conversation with Nigel Verdon. So today on the show, I'm really pleased to be joined by Nigel Verdon, who is the CEO and co-founder of Railsbank, an embedded finance experience platform. Nigel's got a really interesting background. He's founded 3 fintech companies and been successful with those in different ways. And he's also, according to his LinkedIn profile, a finance for good evangelist. So I think we can have a great conversation with Nigel on what it means to be a mission-driven CEO. So Nigel, welcome, and thank you for joining me.
Thank you for the invitation.
So I've just given my interpretation of your bio, but why don't you tell us a little bit about, in just a few words, what's your journey been to up to Railsbank, and what does it mean to be an embedded finance experience platform? Perhaps we should start there. What's Railsbank, and then we can perhaps go back into the past and see how you got there.
Sure. Railsbank is the world's leading global embedded finance experience platform, which as we provide the technology, the tools, the APIs, and everything that a company needs to put a financial product in their existing customer experience. And you look at that as a fintech customer, you'd be putting wallets or you'd be putting lending into it, for example, wage advancing as an experience. And if you're a football club, you may use embedded finance as a fan engagement capability to give them an arsenal credit card or debit card that gives them rewards and offers from the sponsors, so that you can create a sort of economic flywheel on that. And we're very much like AWS, Amazon Web Services, where Amazon totally got rid of the machine room and put it in the cloud. And so you can go live in literally 20 minutes, and a debit card, and for a few $1,000. We're doing the same thing with the financial services industry.
Got it. So you're really making it a platform to make all these options available to companies who don't want to build all that out themselves and go through the hoops, regulatory possibly, or
Absolutely that.
Yeah, perfect. And so what made you start this business? I know that you founded the business about 6 years ago, and you've seen great growth since then. I know you got hundreds of employees and customers for the last 4 years. So, but take us back to the start. What made you decide to go on, I guess, your third or your fourth business and go on the journey?
Sure. This one, there's an observation when we had clients at Currency Cloud, and a lot of their first wave of the fintech, when they got called fintech in Q1 2012. So people like Monzo, Revolut, ourselves, Currency Cloud, TransferWise, Cedars, all that type of genre. Everybody was building the same core infrastructure, like we all used to have to build our own machine rooms and go and data centers and all that type of thing. With AWS, you don't need to do that anymore, and that was our goal, to allow people to accelerate their product idea by us taking away all the overhead of building out the financial infrastructure you need to operate your business, because having a bank account is not differentiation for you. Your customer experience and your value prop is, and that's important. We allow our customers to focus on what's important to their consumers. We do all the heavy work in the background and the stuff which is not hugely interesting to them. But they used to have to do that, and now they don't.
Yeah, it's interesting. I know Jeff Bezos has this distinction between missionaries and mercenaries, right? Which is a little bit harsh terminology, but at least it kind of begins with an M. Yeah, his point is that, that some people will begin the business primarily with the financial perspective, like they see an opportunity, and they're like, let's do this and maximize, flip my stock, as he says, and leave. And he says that the missionaries go because there's a sense of a real customer service or customer experience that they can provide. Amazon, with its kind of focus on customer experience, obviously they see themselves very much in that camp of, we know what we want to provide our customers, and that's where we're orientating. I'm just wondering where you sit on that scale, whether you came at this from the point of view of, there's a lot of money to be made here, or whether you came and said, like, we can really see how we can simplify, make people's lives better, all the rest of it through these services. Clearly there's going to be both, right? But I'm just wondering how you kind of balance those in your mind, or how you see those looking back.
We always come from the perspective of a customer or a problem to solve, and we saw there's a major issue with the cost and pace to market, and then the ongoing operating costs. So we thought that is something we can solve out of it. And other philosophy behind, if you build a great thing that people buy because you solve a real world problem, and people need that, you'll make money. It's a consequence of building something good that people want to buy, rather than the outset thinking, how do I make money, and then go and build it. So, and philosophically, if you see people, one of the things when looking at a ton of startups, I used to be on the investment committee of Techstars Barclays, where there'd be 900 applicants, which would be weeded down to 80 hopefuls, down to 10 people that were accepted into the accelerator and invested in. And there's a massive correlation between success of the startup, where the founder has really zoned in on something people want to buy. And it's something that is a real pain to people and everything. And the ones which just talk about their features, all these amazing features they have, and they're looking for a problem, I'd say some of the quite well-known companies in our space, I think, have fallen into that. So you're thinking, well, who cares about features? Do you actually solve something for somebody? And generally, if you solve something for them, they're happy to pay for it, because there's a value exchange between two people of, I've got money, I've got a pain point, I'm happy to pay for you to take it away, type of thing.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Yeah, so these problem-led versus feature-led businesses. And I've seen that on the close up, really. When I was at Cisco, a massive company, but sometimes the engineers would get out of control. And they'd even come to us with, like, they've released a product with a massive launch, and then I'd be going into the executive level, into customers, potentially trying to explain the business relevance and the business value. And sometimes, we'd be doing our work beforehand, going like, what is the point of this, guys? And they were only able to talk in features. It might take us weeks to actually finally extract from them, okay, so this means that this, and this means that this, but it was very much feature-led.
Yes.
And it does create issues, because then you can miss, so slightly, but just enough, what customers really need. And so I think it's a great point.
Oh, very much so. And the sort of correlation between value as well. If you look at Twilio, which is like a parallel business to us in the telco world, they totally changed their marketing when a lady called Sarah Varney took over to run, and they started marketing on, these are amazing moments for your consumer. They just happen to be delivered by SMS and telco stuff. They've said it's you've taken away the whole transactional issues with the telephone, where you had to go find a bit of Bakelite, turn the wheel, and there's a real transaction experience. And so now you just pick this up and you happen to be in WhatsApp or something else, you hit the call button and you've called somebody. It's not transactional, it's embedded. So it's that sort of companies have done that, like Twilio, like ourselves, and a ton of other markets too. It really does transform a world away from having to go to the device or go to the bank into a world where it just happens in front of you. Uber's a classic example of it. If Uber, you get out the cab and you just go, it's paid for in the background. Beforehand, you stressed about, do you have cash? Do they have change? Do they take cards?
Yeah.
All of that. So
out of it. Yeah.
Uber totally made a frictionless experience and made it into a value prop as opposed to here's my feature of cab driving or that type of thing. And that approach is really people buy into it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's simplicity, there's such a value on simplicity, right? When you can streamline things. I have a question for you, which is, you've been doing this, multiple businesses, and this current business you've been doing for, I guess, 6 years or so. At this point in your leadership and in where you are, what's the personal mission that you're on? Like, at this point, what's the legacy that you're trying to create? Where's your kind of focus at this point? Obviously you've got the thing going, you've built the product, it's happening, right? It's a thing. So what's the mission that drives you now at this point in your success?
Sure, we have a view that finance should be an amazing experience anyway, and you shouldn't be dictated in what you do by finance. So you can almost say democratizing access. But what does that actually mean? It means that beforehand, the bank told you what to do, and what we call old finance. This is what you do because we do it. And it's all wrapped around themselves and not around the consumer. I think by taking finance to where it's relevant at the person's life or the customer journey they happen to be in, like the Uber example I used, you then taken finance and wrapped it around the consumer, and you made the consumer at the centre of everything rather than the bank being the centre of everything. And it's again that mission out there, then you democratise access to it, it's relevant when you actually need it, it becomes frictionless. And a classic example, a friend of mine, Michael Jackson, and I were going to Marbella to a conference we were talking 2 weeks ago. And Michael and I were talking about embedded finance and how finance can disappear. And we drove to the airport in his subscription Volvo, which just paid for the tolls that went through. Later on, it would have paid for its servicing and everything as part of the subscription. You don't worry about it. At the airport, paid for Starbucks and just picked it up and went. And just didn't pay, we just ordered it with the app. Payment happened. And then getting an Uber at the other end to the hotel, same thing. It's just we ordered Uber. We didn't touch money. We didn't touch a wallet. We didn't take a credit card out. It all just happened.
Yeah.
And having that, and it made the experiences that people enjoy, which is getting somewhere, absolutely frictionless and non-stressful on the money side of things. So it's our concept behind this is experience drives everything with the consumer. Why is the world made finance so difficult? And if we make it easy, we can also democratize access and ease of access. And then when you take it into the world of, say Southeast Asia, where there's about 400 million or so unbanked people, 400, 600 million, there's a colossal amount of people. If you bring finance out of the banks and into the like the world of WeChat, into the world of the Capon, it's the local corner store. And because they've got the relationships, they don't need to be a bank or services. They get somebody like us just running all behind the scenes, but they know what the consumer needs. They put it into their cooperative farming experience, for example. rather than having to go to the banker. It becomes part of being part of the cooperative. It just happens.
Right.
So that's our sort of real mission behind everything, is really democratizing and making it an amazing experience in something you're actually trying to do at that moment in time.
Yeah, it's making me think. I'm wondering I love this idea of democratizing finance and this idea of creating frictionless experiences. It's really compelling. What I'm wondering is, what's the little vignette, right? The snapshot from the future that you've not yet created, but that you'd love to create. I'll give you an example. One of my clients, he's the CEO of a fiber optic company, and the founder that. And but he does it from a real sense of social impact. So his point is, anyone can sell a fiber connection, but what I want to do is transform the way that cities engage with the internet and create new opportunities and so forth. And so for him, he was always guided by this idea of, wouldn't it be amazing if there was a kid in an underprivileged family in this place, underprivileged place, who was able to create an amazing career in online gaming because he had access to the world's fastest fiber infrastructure and was in a hub which supported that and so forth. So he had this kind of image in his mind of this tiny little snapshot of what would be an incredible thing to create in the world as he went about building his business. And what was amazing is that's happened. It came about. One of the players they deployed, they created a gaming hub, and this kind of stuff started to become very real. So I'm just kind of wondering, pushing your thinking a bit, as you think about all those areas about creating frictionless finance, creating this infrastructure for people, what's something which would really inspire you if you just say, wow, here we were in 2022, but in 5 years' time, we're able to do this and create this for somebody. What comes to your mind when I say that?
I think it's how you democratize. My view is, if you restructure the finance industry between pools of capital and people, there's this thing in the middle called banks and capital markets, which sort of gets in the way, add cost. And if I want to make impact to help somebody in, say, Nepal, there's no way in hell I can do that. The what's called a distributed finance, DeFi networks, which are emerging. I mean, some are complete cons, some are interesting technology and stuff. But the core concept behind that is being able to see cause and effect of $1 in here, say in Monaco, is $1 out, making impact to lending in Nepal to a small farmer. And then you've got impact, B, you get a return on it as well, that's where capitalism works. But you can see the cause and effect. And so you don't get hidden by this morass of old finance and that cost of old finance that imposes on it and takes the margin out before it gets to somebody at the other end. You can bypass all that using blockchain technology and the DeFi networks and all this smart contract stuff that goes on. That would be an amazing place, because suddenly finance totally is democratized and it doesn't have to be local. Now, that's a terrifying concept for the regulators and everything, but you think, how do you regulate something that is distributed and global? And so there's quite a lot of philosophical debate of should central banks and the currency control something or not? The Bitcoin, and some of the Bitcoin people are total evangelists about nobody should own finance or anything. But if you get the happy medium where you've got the solidity of a central bank, you've got a much more efficient financial system, and you can see cause and effect, I think that takes us to a really good place. So it's not like banks are bad, it's just they are different role within the industry. And parallel, if you looked at the music industry, which when Apple launched the iTunes, was on its knees completely. Now, that simple innovation of, I think it was the marketing of the iPod. Can you imagine you put 30,000 records in this and carry them around with you? That was, oh my God, okay, I can do that. suddenly music became everywhere, because the Walkman was a great invention, but it was a tape, and the tape always got chewed up eventually.
Yes.
And there's one album. And so that innovation of making the track digital suddenly just boomed the industry, and other things came out like Spotify and all the streaming. The fact that you don't need to own everything, it's wherever you happen to be, your music's there, is a similar sort of concept of it.
It's Richard here with just a quick interlude. If you're serious about multiplying your impact, I have a free resource that you won't want to miss. I've put together a short email course called Exponential Leadership Principles. In it, I set out how you can use the same strategies as some of the world's top leaders to get out of incremental progress and achieve breakthrough results. Be prepared to have your current thinking challenged and to learn some very new ways of leading. If you're interested in following along, simply sign up at xquadrant.com/go/exponential. And now back to the conversation. Yeah, it's when you create frictionless things, you start to create ubiquity, right? Adoption rises, it becomes simple. It's not a fixed system, right? It creates effects. It's just really fascinating. I mean, we'll move on. I think it's a really interesting subject because I can see something in there for you to own, because you've made things happen in the finance world, and you are, and I can see that this topic is important to you. Perhaps there is something really about really owning that, like making finance frictionless on this huge scale, right? I think that there's a really compelling.
That's part of our product, our sort of product strategy is we need to connect the consumer all the way to the central bank. We need to connect the consumer all the way to Visa or MasterCard, and then get rid of everything in between.
Right.
And TransferWise have done that to a lot of extent, and in the UK we're the second people after TransferWise to do that. So it's really looking at, everybody says it's complex and everything. I think putting something on the moon with the power of a BlackBerry, that's complex. That's really, I think changing stuff in finance because it's got regulation and stuff, that's not complex. It's just thinking it through and figuring out how you can get it to work. It's not like NASA and the first moon landing on technology, which is today just taken for granted, if you see what I mean. So it's just like everything. Don't believe it's a big task that can't be done. It's like the first person looked at Everest, thought that's quite big.
Yes. So how do you mobilize people around your vision? How do you inspire people? How do you get people really pulling in the same direction? Perhaps what have you learned the hard way on that? What have you found doesn't work as you do that?
It's hard, but you just got to crystallize what you're trying to achieve down to very simple messages, and then have just a clear set of objectives. It's here. This is where we're going. We need to get there. It's amazing change we'll make if we achieve that. And here's the things we need doing, and then just leave them to figure out, because if you hire smart people, just get out of their way is the best way to do it. And they'll figure out how to do it for you. They may not do it the same way as yourself, but they'll get there. There's a million roads to the same sort of end goal. But by objectives and not taking things on yourself. I used to take things on myself because I knew I could fix it. But you get far better outcomes, I think, when you've got a team of people just in the same direction. And it's sometimes a bit like herding cats. To make sure that they're still pointed, and you've got to pick one up and put it back in the direction. And just keeping not changing the direction. You just got to keep and have belief in what you're doing, because it's so easy to change and chop and do stuff that's interesting, the new sparkly thing you're seeing, and keeping the same consistency of direction, unless there's a major pivot, which sometimes happens. But direction, getting out of the way is the best thing. I say to my team, my job here is to shake hands, smile at people, and raise money to finance what we're doing. It's up to you to go and make that happen.
Make it happen. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, on that topic of of moving people forward in the direction, how do you deal with all the uncertainty in the market at the moment? I mean, I know especially right now when we're recording it, we've had a massive crash in crypto. There's inflation going up. There's uncertainty about the geopolitical situation. There's a whole load of factors that are destabilizing businesses. How do you think about that? How do you navigate a way forward and take people with you?
Sure, there's sort of fairly well understood playbooks for like growth bull markets, unknown markets, and unknown markets. It's really about if you're in our sort of stage of business, growth stage businesses, is you've got to dust off the efficiency handbook or playbook, which is very much about give yourself 12 to 18 months runway of capital, double down on core products, get rid of new exciting stuff that you might be doing, and then focus where the revenue is and where the customer is. And it's probably a good discipline to do that anyway, once in a while. So the market forces you to do it as well at this time. So it's an efficiency and focus play that you must be able to do, and also make the decisions to any change you've got to do to get there. So they say we're not hiring anybody, or we've got to reduce costs by X, Y, and Z, so we won't do this. We've had to let some people go, and we'll cut back on plants in the office or something. Goldman, you can tell when there's bad stuff coming because the fruit trolley used to disappear off the trading floor. So the fruit disappears, okay, the powers that be seem to think there's a bear market coming. So but there is a playbook generally for doing that. And having experience, myself and my team have been through a ton of downturns since the 1990s. And if you read you probably heard a guy called Nick Taleb who did the book, The Black Swan. He was an options trader writing insurance on events that would technically never happen, but every 6 years they tend to happen with his Black Swan events. So every 6 years he makes a ton of money, and then he's got okay money in the fallow years, where it's a good years for other people, are fallow for him. But he's got that contrarian way of looking at stuff. So and if you don't make decisions and you try and overthink things too much, and you get into so much analysis and everything, that's when you tend to go bust. And there's unfortunately a lot of, at this current moment, there's a ton of companies up for sale. You'll see companies that are starting allowed to sell, but they're actually going bust at the moment. So that's a consequence that happens, but you've got to be brave and make decisions. And sometimes decisions wrong, but don't worry about it, because no decision is worse than the wrong decision. The wrong decision you can change, and generally on that.
Yeah, I think that efficiency focused playbook, it's helpful because it's like it's like a living organism. You have moments of expansion and moments of contraction, seasons. You've got spring and autumn, pruning, and I think it's these cycles do come, and I think it's helpful. I mean, I have a term which is scale back to scale up, right? Which is you have these seasons of growth where you try things, you experiment, you get things out there, and that's good. But there comes a point where you need to actually go, okay, let's consolidate, prune those branches. The ones that are less fruitful, we can get rid of, bring it back down, and gives more energy for what's left, right? I've done it myself. In my tiny, small scale business, I do that as well. This thing here, do I need to be doing this anymore? No. Do we need to be doing this? Possibly not. And it brings back to a healthier course. I think you're right. It's an important discipline. And then I think decisiveness. That's it's You just said, no, you've got to have something in motion, right? If you're not in motion, you can't. Well, you're actually already deciding. That's the point. You're already making a decision by not deciding.
Yes. No, it is. There's a whole theory around decisioning, and my father was in military, and so they're very much taught about make a decision. You've got to make decisions, and if you don't make decisions, you are in this sort of paralysis mode, and people tend to unfortunately die in that sort of mode. You can always change the decision. That's the important thing. But they also train you on good decisioning, full stop. That's a real skill to learn. Is decision making.
Yeah, what a shame we don't learn it in school, right? I mean, these are skills which everyone needs in their own levels. That's another question for another day. Let's move on to our quick fire questions. What's the favorite quote that you perhaps you live by, or that you bring out a lot in your own leadership?
It's going to make decisions. So it's make a decision. Don't worry about making the wrong decision. You can change it, and we're not in an industry where anybody dies if you make the wrong decision. Like a doctor, that's a hell of a pressure on them, or in the military. But we're in finance, so you can do some money, but people will carry on living. So just make a decision, change it if it's wrong.
Yeah, perfect. What about a favorite app? Often we have an app or something on our phone that we find particularly useful, particularly makes us particularly productive, or whatever. Is there anything that you can't do without?
Spotify. It's Spotify. I've been a musician all my life, and I collect guitars. I make them, I play them all over the world, and I have a parallel sort of like a ton of my friends are in there as professionals in various parts of it. So Spotify is the thing that just keeps us connected and discovering new stuff every day. It's a phenomenal tool.
That's fascinating, actually. You might know I run a CEO mastermind group and community, and we're meeting next week, actually. And I'm going to take a guitar with me, I think, because there's so many of these people play guitars. I play guitar and so forth, and it's fascinating. It seems to be a thing. CEOs and guitars. I should do an episode on
it. One person should get like David Solo, who was I was at Swiss Bank, or he's one of the senior guys there, but he's a senior guy at the age of like 30. And then he became the CEO of Global Asset Management, GAM, which is a big, huge asset manager. He's a phenomenal guitar player as well. So that's one you should definitely get.
Yeah, excellent. What about a book that's really influenced you?
I think it was Jack Kerouac, On the Road, and it's like the craziness of it, and it's just a good story of interesting stuff. And I've gone on the road, as you might say, on sort of trips and things, and quite a few times in different parts of the world. But Jack Kerouac, On the Road, and another one, The Old Man, the Sea by Hemingway. And it's just the interesting thing, you see Hemingway's life and what a sort of like a complete alpha male type person can write something as amazing as Old Man, the Sea. It's an amazing novel.
Great. What advice would you give your 20-year-old self?
The advice I give my 20-year-old self is yes, if you've got the idea, stand up for it more. But have more belief in some of your ideas. Just have more belief, because it's the belief in things that really take stuff forward.
Yeah, believe more. Fantastic. Many of our best guests on the show come from referrals. So I'm just wondering, is there anybody who inspires you, a CEO who's up to great things in the world, who you think would be a good, somebody who would be a great guest for the podcast?
Yeah, there's a chap called Charlie Dellingpole, who's the CEO and founder of Comply Advantage. And he's a fascinating guy, and he's also, he's a super intelligent, unbelievably intelligent human being, and so he's quite a wonderful person. And another person you might want to talk to is actually on our board. She's not a CEO, but she was the COO of Snapchat, the COO of Instagram, and is on the board of Lululemon. Emily White, one of the original people in Google, as well. So it's got a fascinating story of how you scale these type of businesses.
Right. Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you for that. So finally, with one of my favorite questions, how much, no matter how much we've achieved, there's always a next level to get to. So where does Railsbank go from here as a business? What's next for Railsbank? And then how's that going to change how you need to lead differently and the role that you play in the business?
Sure. If our ambition is to have to be a company the same sort of scale of AWS, and powering and being the infrastructure behind anybody doing finance, so whether it's a sports club like Arsenal or Man United monetizing 1.1 billion fans they have, or whether it's a small startup with a laptop and lots of coffee. We want to be the place where they'll sit on. And what's that mean for me? It could be a public company, and so it'd be an interesting change to. I've run 3 big private companies, and going to be running a public company might be quite interesting. I'd have to figure out skill sets, but I've just hired the chairman of MasterCard, former chairman of MasterCard, who took MasterCard through the flotation, there for 15 years. A guy called Rick Haythornthwaite, who was CEO of Invensys, Blue Circle Cement, and others. So that's hopefully he's a mentor to me to be able to take through to what A is like to run a public company, because he has, and take a company through flotation.
Fascinating. Brilliant. Finally, if people want to find out more about you or about Railsbank, how do they do that?
Sure. I'm the only Nigel Verdon on LinkedIn, so please reach out. I do look at everybody who does reach out. The ones that get rejected, unfortunately, are recruitment consultants and software companies. There's billions of software companies trying to do apps for you. But yeah, I look at everybody coming in, so it's a 99% chance I'll say yes.
Beautiful. Hey, Nigel, it's been really fascinating. It's been great to find out that, this company, frankly, I didn't know about, until we first started getting in touch. And you've got, you're going to be the next AWS. So I'm pretty glad that I've discovered it. I think it's fascinating, your vision for creating frictionless finance, for reducing the overall cost of the system, for allowing people to have experiences and do that without having to worry about the transactional component of that. I think it's really inspiring, and I think you've given some really great points around dealing with uncertainty a little bit, about scaling back to scale up, to make sure we're being decisive, and so many other things. So just thank you for the time you've spent to share all that with us.
No, thank you for the invitation. It's very kind to reach out and ask to join the podcast.
Well, we'll look forward to following the news of Railsbank as it continues to grow. So thanks, Nigel, and speak soon. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Now let's talk about you. When you're in top leadership, when you're in the biggest role of your career, who supports you at a deep level as you lead others? Who helps you multiply your impact and get to the next level? If you're ready to learn more about our content, our coaching, and our community, then visit us at xquadrant.com.